Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Friday Review of Apps. My name is Reto Meier. I'm joined in the studio today by Chung.
Good afternoon. Hi, everyone.
And today we're going to do things a little bit differently. We're going to continue to try and work on themes. So the theme for today's episode is news apps, and that's been liberally interpreted by our viewers as news and RSS reading apps. So that's a lot of what we got in the moderator queue this week, so that's a lot of what we're going to be looking at. What we're going to try and do is take a look at some of the top voted apps from the moderator queue and have a look at them and see what we like, what we don't like. And then right at the end, I'm going to spend a little bit of time showing you what are some of my favorite news apps and why they are some of my favorites, and see how they compare with what some of you guys have nominated. So I think we'll start off by providing a little bit of context. So I've put together a list of what I want in a news app, which would make it my favorite news app. So if you can put that on screen for us, Ian. There we go. News app wish
Check
list.
that out. I like that list.
That's right. And any of these items which a news app doesn't have makes me angry, as you can clearly see on the graphic. Thank you very much, Roman Urich, for your artistic skills here in putting this together. So what makes a great news app? For me, I needed to do a few things. So I needed to have no latency at startup. So I don't want a splash screen ever. I don't want to be presented with loading or pulling down your news articles, please wait. Anything after the first time. I'll allow it the first time. Seems reasonable because you can't load data before your app is loaded at least once. But beyond that, I want to see news, and its freshness is up for debate, but I never want to be presented with an empty screen or a loading dialogue. I want to have great notifications. I want notifications which are rich, as in rich notifications from Jelly Bean. I want them to not be too interrupty, so they just come up when I want them, and the content needs to be relevant. It needs to be related to the things that I'm interested in seeing. Breaking news, stuff where there's a really high chance that this is something I actually want to see. And it's the same sort of thing for widgets. I want to have a great widget that's resizable, that can live on my home screen, so I can make sure I don't miss anything important throughout the day.
Whoa, hang on, you guys. This is really weird. We were streaming and now we're not.
Okay.
I have a start streaming button again. Let's do this all over again. Woohoo! We'll get it right this time.
So,
Take two.
Can we just start again from the beginning?
Start again. It's a nice day to...
So, did we not stream or what? Or were we streaming at some point?
Now somehow it stopped itself and it says it can't start broadcasting again because it's already ended. Holy shit, what the hell? This is so wrong. Let's see. Oh, okay. Sorry, everybody. That was my fault. My fault. Ian Nee Lewis admits that it was his fault.
It's a shame we don't have a producer cam today, because I feel like putting in a face to the name and the blame would be useful in this instance. But
you can find me on Google Plus.
And circle Ian.
All right, we'll be looking at a post-mortem for that in about an hour's time. But in the meantime, can I presume that everyone has been listening and viewing along since the beginning?
Yes, so we don't get a do-over after all.
Oh, that's a shame. I think everyone would really have liked to have to see exactly how much I can do this exactly the same way. So let's bring up my list of hopes and dreams once again, if possible, Ian.
Okay.
Excellent. Okay, where were we? So I was talking about notifications and widgets. So the other thing that I want to have similar to that is offline support. So I want to make sure that if I'm reading it on public transport, that every time I go in and out of a tunnel or anything like that, I can
When you're flying.
Absolutely. Flying is a
When
little
you're in
more
a
of a
submarine.
challenge. Submarine, indeed. I think for me, it's not as important that it be like completely offline, but that it works in intermittent situations.
Right.
So if I happen to click on an article, when I go underground or lose cell connection or something, it still works for, let's say, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So 5 minutes
That's
in
fair.
airplane mode. I think so. I also want to have something which is an experience similar to what I get when reading a newspaper, which I realize dates me significantly, but I still kind of like that flow of being able to sort of page through news and see what's interesting, see what catches my eye. So some sort of narrative, some sort of category browsing, which lets me sort of just jump between articles and continue reading things which I think are interesting. What else? I don't want to read through the whole list. You guys, it's been on screen long enough. You can probably see it by now. But I think the only other thing I want to call out is that, you know, I do want to have fresh data, so I do want to have background refreshes, but I don't want it to drain my battery. So I noticed that after installing all of the apps today that my battery life got to 25% within about 4 hours of installing them all. So that's a bad sign. Harder to judge sort of when I install a bunch of things at once. But definitely an important thing for anything which is going to stay installed on my device is that it keeps fresh but doesn't drain my battery. So anything particularly
that's a
you want to call
hard
out?
balance to strike, huh?
It is a tricky balance, and that's how you get the big bucks.
There you go. There you go.
Were there any of those items which you particularly want to call
I
out?
like to highlight, you know, the fact that an app would work well on different screen sizes, as what we've been advocating would be very, very nice, because each one of us, you know, have like multiple devices, and I would imagine, you know, it's not uncommon for regular consumers to have maybe a little bit over one device, 1.5 to 2 devices.
1.5 devices.
1.5 devices on average, right? They have a phone with a small screen and maybe a tablet, a Nexus 7, for example, or a 10-inch device. So make sure your app looks pretty nice, and good job on the on-air sound. Shall we get started?
Let's get going. So to give you guys a bit of background, we're not going to go into as much depth as we have in the past on each app. We're going to basically buzz through the 5 apps that we've got installed and try and highlight how it fits into that list which I showed you just beforehand. And then I'm going to show you 2 of my favorite news apps to see how they compare. So let's get started. Let's fire up Good News.
Let's switch to the tablet, Ian, please.
Perfect. So Good News. Good News is an RSS reader, if I'm not mistaken. So is this tied to Google Reader?
It is. It is tied to the Google Reader. So when you first launch it, it asks you, hey, which account would you like to associate this app with? So I went through that authentication process, and it automatically pulls down from my Google Reader list all my subscriptions and all the stored items. So let's go into the start articles. It shows you a bunch of apps, but at first glance, it feels like it's so sparse.
It's very sparse, isn't it? Yeah, it's basically white screen with a few things on either end.
We're looking at a 10-inch screen, and if that's the layout, if that's the only one layout that you want to do, at least put some margins on the two sides.
Yeah, it feels very, very cramped.
Even better, you know, obviously, is to implement the 2-pane version, the 2-pane layout for a bigger tablet screen size.
That would seem like a pretty obvious thing to do for an app like this, where you are going to be doing a lot of navigation through lists of categories and then trying to read the articles. So having the 2-pane layout really going to simplify that navigation.
Exactly. So there are different sources available. Let's tap into CNN, and I expect to see a lot of Olympics related.
Should have gone with the BBC if you wanted Olympics related news.
Oh, that's right, CNN. So
there
you go.
All right, so it's again the same sort of thing, right? We've got this massive amount of screen, and it's just a lot of white with a very small amount of text and no images at all.
Oops. Let's go back to BBC. Let's try to drill down to a particular article. It's a 1-line headline, and if you want to, I guess, go into the website, you press the website or the detail icon, but it doesn't show you anything.
So it's not immediately obvious how this app works and what you're trying to do with it, which makes for an interesting sort of challenge. It definitely isn't optimized for tablet devices. If we switch to the phone camera, you'll see that it's sort of a better layout. It
is.
If not perfect. Sorry, Ian, if you could switch us across there, we can show the folks at home. Perfect. So you can see it's exactly the same layout. Right. It's just that sort of small paragraph of text here fits in a way that's sort of much more easily readable. So you sort of They get that right, but it's clear that the layout here has been designed specifically for a smaller camera.
It's more natural, right? If there's only one thing that you can do, I strongly suggest, maybe adding like what I said before, adding some margin to the left and right. That'll make it a little bit more natural.
Absolutely. So let's switch back to the tablet cam, because I know the folks at home prefer the high resolution one. So let's see, if we exit out and go back in, do we have any latency on the first? So open straight back up to where we were beforehand,
That's good.
which is nice. And you can see down the bottom here that it's kicked off a synchronization, which is nice. Too early to judge how well it does in terms of battery life overall, but certainly it gets the no latency solution, which is good. One thing it doesn't do, so you did the initial sign-in profile. So this was for an account which wouldn't have had a Google Reader account associated with it. Did it suggest to you a bunch of different topics and sources that you might be interested in?
I actually didn't go through this use case. I had an account with some articles associated with it. But that's a good suggestion, by the way.
So that would be useful. So again, you want that experience. So for a lot of people, they're going to download this app specifically to read their Google Reader articles. But for the people who don't use Google Reader, there are probably a few of them. You're going to want to basically provide them with that sort of newspaper content of here's a bunch of stuff that a lot of other people think is useful. So that's definitely something I'd consider in your flow if it's not already there.
That's great. That's great. And in fact, that's what the Google Reader product does, right? When you first log on, when you are the first time user, it actually suggests a number of articles, so that you don't need to stare at a blank screen.
So I'm going to turn the Wi-Fi off.
So what are you trying to simulate?
I'm going to turn the Wi-Fi off and see how we do when we're offline. So
all right.
Let's see if we can read this. So we can. So
at
it's
least
actually downloading the content,
you can
right?
see the headline, which
So
is
that's
nice.
fine. I mean, it's an RSS reader, so I wouldn't expect it to cache the links, but we can at least go through here and read all of the text. It doesn't have the images. Again, that's probably a reasonable compromise. So we can go through here, find out which articles we're interested in, and then we can star them for
future.
Yeah, for future reference. So that's interesting.
That's
so
great.
if I click here, it's actually allowing me to select the mode for it, read, list, or start.
Yes.
That's a little bit counterintuitive. I would expect if I hit the star here, for
It's
it to just
Boolean.
star it.
It's more like Boolean, right? Either star it or not.
I think it is actually. So if I actually hit the star, it works. It's if I hit anywhere else on the header.
Okay, so it goes back to the point where you want to lay out your app properly for a bigger tablet screen versus a small.
So these touch targets are way too small. I should say these touch targets.
Yep.
So we want to make them much bigger. We can see here. So they're using are they using a view pager? I thought they were.
That's where I saw it.
So they are using a view pager, but it seems
so what are you paging through is what?
This will be the different
articles within CNN.com.
But what's confusing? Timeout? Sorry?
Oh.
We're getting hand signals
sorry,
from Ian. We're not quite sure what
you're
they
right.
mean.
We haven't agreed on the hand signals. You're supposed to just shake your head or nod like a baseball
wink.
Excellent. Yeah.
catcher. Now, I just want to mention that two things. First, that despite earlier promises, you're spending an awful lot of time on this particular app.
True.
And second, that we do have Steve from Fandroid on the line.
All right. Android is up next.
Yeah. So let's move on. Okay. So thank you for the heads up, because we do tend to get a little involved. So big highlight here, it does work does work online and offline. Biggest issue is that you've got a huge amount of white space, so it doesn't create a really immersive reading experience. So you really want to think about updating this for tablets specifically. All right, let's move on to Fandroid. Fandroid news, because we have the creator online with us. So
I'm sorry, what's your name again?
Hi, I'm Steve.
Steve.
Albright.
Good to meet you.
Hey Steve, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
So why don't you spend a couple of minutes and talk us through the app? What should we be looking at? How closely do you think it conforms to the sorts of things we were talking about earlier on?
From what you were talking about early on, one thing the app does not have yet is tablet layouts. It's something that we do plan on integrating into the future, but currently, right now, we wanted to make sure that we get all the bugs out of the app before we move on to adding more layouts.
Sure.
I think
Right.
it's just a good app.
Let's iterate, right?
I think that makes sense. Okay.
So it looks like a little bit of your screen's getting cut off. Or never mind.
So
It looks like it's moving pretty accurate to what I assumed it would be on a tablet.
So one of the things I'd probably point out, just looking at it on the tablet like this, as you say, it looks like part of the screen's getting cut off, and that's distinctly possible with our AV setup. But it actually does highlight a good point, which is that you don't really have any padding around the outside. So if you have a look at the design guide, it'll give you an idea of what rhythm your app should follow, and I think it's at least a 6-pixel border around the outside. I could be wrong on the specifics. But what you've got now makes it look a little bit cramped, so that everything feels like it's almost falling off the edge. So you just want to add a little bit of padding around each of your elements and around the edges of your layout to make it feel a little bit more comfortable within the app. And you can see that up the top here, where you've got your icon in the action bar. It's that kind of level of padding where you just want to sort of bring everything in and out in the same way that the action bar works, and it makes things just feel a little bit more comfortable.
I also suggest looking into increasing the font size a little bit, because if you're looking at the category heading or news start, they're just a little bit too small, and they.
I do have where you can switch the actual font size.
Oh, great! Let's have a look at it. I imagine it's under the overflow menu.
Font size. There you go.
Let's check out the font size. Great, tiny,
make
tiny,
it huge.
small, large, huge. Whoa.
That was interesting. So is that, I take it that's a custom animation you put in there to shake the screen
shake?
when you change the screen size, the font size?
It's a pretty common shake one. I mean, most people use it for error dialogue.
Uh-huh.
I could do something there so you know it's actually processing something.
I quite like that,
That's
actually. I
pretty
think
cool.
that looks neat. One of the things I wanted to point out, to highlight specifically about this app that I like, is the way you've handled starred items. So I've seen this done a bunch of different ways. And most commonly, people will have a single list where the starred items are at the top of that list. And so you'll click something in the list and it'll disappear from where it was and move it to the top. And that drives me crazy, because it really interferes with your normal workflow. What you've done here is great, because I can star all of these, and then they appear here on my starred list, which I really like. So, you're doing that instant star, you get everything highlighted, and you straight away have this list. And if I want to remove them, I can take them off this list and they disappear. And that makes sense to me.
That's intuitive, yeah.
So I quite
Good
like
job.
that. And it still keeps that nice, simple interface. So I assume that all of the news which you're displaying within this app comes from Fandroid?
Correct, yes.
Perfect.
And I see the refresh icon up in the action bar. What's the refresh strategy like? Is it manual or is it periodic? Or how configurable is it?
What I do is, by default, I have a background service that runs every 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the limitations of widgets only being able to update every 30 minutes, I integrated my own service.
Right. If you need to go more frequent than that, you have to implement your own service.
Right. I mean, some people like every 5 minutes. That's a little overkill for me.
Right.
Like once an hour. If I set it with no options, then I get people complaining from both.
A manual. I think overall, if you set a default out of the box refresh frequency at 30 minutes frequency, that's reasonable for a new site like Fandroid.
Well, one of the things which I talked about at my I/O talk this year was trying to create something a little bit more dynamic in terms of setting that default. So it's great that you give users the options to choose, but one option which you might want to consider is having sort of a dynamic sort of back off to those updates, so that you default at 30 minutes, but if a user has installed the app and they never actually open it or open it very infrequently, then that 30 minutes is suddenly really aggressive, right? Because you're draining the battery every half hour, firing up the network, doing that download. And I only open the app twice a day. So what I kind of recommend you can do there is to basically keep track of how often they open the app or click on the widget or anything else. And if you go past the interval of your refreshes, then double it, so that, okay, they haven't looked at it in 30 minutes, I'm going to make it an hour. They haven't looked at it in an hour, so I'm going to make it 2, 4, 8, until you're just updating once a day. And then as soon as they do open the app and look at it, you can then go straight back to that most aggressive 30 minutes. So you're sort of trying to balance that battery life versus the freshness based on how frequently users are actually using the app. So that might be something to look at.
That's a good tip.
Otherwise, the app looks good. I think it's really interesting strategy you've got with your advertising, where you give people the opportunity to turn it off if they want to, but make it clear that basically by leaving the advertising on, they're helping to support the website, which I think is an interesting take on advertising supported app.
Right.
Can I ask, how what do you find the split is? Do most people leave it on? Do most people turn it off? Do you have any sort of analytics around that?
It really seems like a mixed crowd. I mean, the hardcore Android readers they like the support, you know.
Mm.
I think giving them the option to do it or not to do it, it kind of encourages them to leave them on.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like you could turn them
That's
off,
great.
but you can help
It
us
would
out
be
a little
really
bit.
helpful.
If you force them into like displaying ads everywhere possible, you're gonna probably just get a lot of complaints more than anyone supporting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Well, it's interesting that although you haven't explicitly optimized your app for a bigger screen size, I noticed that the ad size they have adjusted themselves to fit nicer on a tablet versus a smaller ad unit on a phone.
So yeah, we probably want to move on again pretty quickly. What I like, I mean, the reason why we don't have to spend too much time is because this is nice and simple. So it does exactly what you'd expect it to do. Does the update schedule, which we talked about. Do you have a widget for this particular app?
I actually have 3 widgets.
3 widgets, nice.
One is just an icon widget, which was first started to mimic of what a launcher icon is.
Uh-huh.
I ended up removing the actual title because, or the actual app name under the icon, because I couldn't get it to be perfect on all devices. It was very, very tedious to try to get that to look right. The other 2, one
You have a
is
stack widget.
One's just a news widget where it has left and right arrow buttons, and then also I have the stack widget.
Oh, nice. I do like a stack widget, and so that's
Pretty
showing
nice.
us the first article in each of the categories, and is the number representing the number of articles within that category, or what does the number represent?
The numbers are consistent with how many comments are in the article.
Oh, I see.
okay.
I see. So it's each of the articles, because you only have essentially one category, which is all of the articles on Fandroid, and then the counter is telling you how many comments are for each article. That makes sense. So you
Right,
can
and
get.
then if there are new articles which are triggered by the background service, there'll be actually like a little bubble up by the Fandroid logo that will display how many new articles.
Very
Oh,
cool.
wow.
Very cool.
Once you enter the app, it'll clear that as counters or any notifications that would appear. And they're new articles, which is different than read and unread.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay,
That's great.
That's nice. So like I said, we should move on. But the one last thing that I want to mention in terms of the background updates, given that you've already got a fairly aggressive timetable for those refreshes, you may want to consider using Google Cloud Messaging so that you're notifying each of your users whenever you get those new articles. So rather than waking up every 30 minutes or potentially every 5 minutes for those really hardcore users, presumably you guys aren't quite publishing every 5 minutes yet. So you can sort of back that off by basically just alerting each of your users when there are new articles to read, so that then the device can wake up, and the next time it's connected, it can go ahead and get those updates rather than sort of doing it all on the device side.
Right.
Yeah.
Great.
Cool. Yeah. So GCM, if you aren't familiar with it, Google Cloud Messaging was a re-released version of cloud-to-device messaging, which we released at Google I/O. So there's no quotas or anything like that, which makes it kind of perfect for this sort of thing where you want to blast out a lot of messages to people.
And it supports batching too.
Yes.
Right? Which is awesome.
Which is very handy. Cool. All right. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll I think we should move on to a couple of these other apps while we still have time.
Thanks.
Excellent.
Right, shall we try Reto?
Yes. Let's have a look at Reto HD, which, if I'm not
Reto
mistaken,
HD. What? What were you
I
gonna
think
say?
maybe Ian represented this in the moderator queue. Is that right, Ian? Is this an app you're a fan of?
Oh no, my app is G-Reader Pro,
Mm.
but I'm
Reader
eager to see if
Pro.
Reader HD beats it.
Oh, let's check it out then. So this is what. So this is again an RSS reader. So presumably this is looking at the same.
Also
Google
from the
Reader?
same source, Google Reader.
Google Reader.
Provisioned with the same account. It's got a 2-pane UI,
Excellent.
which
Excellent. We
presents
like that.
itself nicely on the bigger screen size, like what we're looking at. And on the right pane, you see, on the right fragments, to be exact, you see a bunch of news listings with ability to star an article, I assume. The article has been starred, great. And a checkbox right here, I assume it
for
designates
marking it
whether
as
you've
read.
read it or
Nice.
not. And the setup is pretty straightforward, just like the previous news apps that we looked at.
Very nice.
Rugby, it shows an ad down down below in the news item.
Do me a favor, star one of those. So reticent Brits, for example. Give that one a star, because I happen to have the app open on a phone here as well, and I want to see it magically update.
Is it provisioned using the same account?
It is the same
All
account.
Right, cool.
So let's see if it magically does it. I rather suspect that. Oh no, it is refreshing. So we'll see. I suspect that we'll have to jump back out of this and go back in before it will refresh rather than doing it dynamically. Let's try that. No, not yet.
Well, let's go on and we'll report back.
We'll report back, exactly. Yeah. We'll switch back to the tablet.
All right.
Perfect. So in terms of the layout, so this is interesting. It, again, is a lot of white space, but it's white space that is keeping it simple rather than keeping it empty. So we have, all of the screen being taken up, great use of the action bar, great use of the split panel, which Fred was describing earlier.
Nice.
So it looks pretty good, right?
Yeah,
I quite like
pleasant.
the look of this.
It's a pleasant experience. Let's go ahead and test the offline test.
Please, yes.
I just switched off the Wi-Fi during, and then let's go back to Reto HD. And
so again, there's no latency there, so that's
right,
definitely
which is good. And it looks like news headlines are cached.
Yeah, nice. So
Right,
you can go in and read the summaries of each.
Reto happy.
It does. It does make me happy.
Oh, I'm not going to be happy until you can view original offline.
Let's see what happens when we hit view original. So it's just it's opening up the browser and failing. So that's
we have Reto happy, not so much.
Ian, not so happy. Let's see if Reader Pro.
I think Reto is not quite the connoisseur of reader apps that I am.
This is probably true. I have to be honest.
And podcasts, right?
I do love Google Reader, but I do tend to use that on my computer. Whereas when I'm on my mobile, I prefer to read just sort of news from news sources.
All right.
So let's have a look at. We don't have
News
G-Reader Pro on that
Pro,
device. That's interesting. So G-Reader Pro, I have it on this one. So let's have a look. I'm just going to scroll this down while I sign in. Well, actually, we can look at this flow. You're allowed to see that email address. So it's using the authenticator on the device, which is nice. And it goes through. So this is interesting. So the Fandroid app did this as well. During first load, it tells you what's new, which is great, except for the most part, people don't care. So there is a place on Google Play to be able to say exactly what's new, and I certainly don't have any objection to putting it somewhere in your overflow menu. But having it as sort of the first thing you see just slows me down. Like if I click that icon, I just want to read some news. I'm not particularly interested in what's new in the app.
The other deal breaker here is down under notes.
Oh, if you like G-Reader, rate us with 5 stars. Yeah, so this is a thing. So, there's been a lot of back and forth, even within our own team, of how we feel about apps which solicit ratings in Google Play.
Well, there's a pretty important distinction, right?
Yeah.
Between asking for people to rate your app versus asking for a very specific rating.
Exactly. I think we're pretty much all in agreement that when you are specifically asking for a 5-star review, even if you're saying, only if you like it, then give it 5 stars, that definitely crosses the line. Me personally, I don't like it at all. I just think, look, people know how Google Play works. If they like your app and they choose to rate it, they're going to do so. Asking them explicitly to do it, I don't think it's going to give you a lot of value.
Cool.
But definitely don't solicit 5-star reviews specifically because, it's kind of not kosher. So let's close this and move on. So this is the general layout. So they've got an action bar style bar along the top, which I have to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of because it's way too small. So you can see my finger in relation to those buttons as the camera
custom action bar.
Yeah, and I mean they're all way too small. Like I'm gonna miss this and accidentally hit the wrong thing. It's also interesting because this, see, I'm confused straight away. Because I expect these to be actions. I expect them to be things which I click and it performs something. So plus should add a new subscription, which it does.
It throws you to a screen that has a different look and feel. It's got a dark theme versus the light theme that we were looking at.
Exactly. So it's kind of throwing me, and I can browse. Let's see, .NET, something I did in a previous life. Let's have a look at Scotty Goo's blog. So this is all taking a little bit longer than I would like because I'm an impatient person. So I'm going to hit back. And from here again, so I'm not expecting these to be to function as navigation, but as actions, and they're kind of working as navigation. So as I'm clicking through these, this is switching between feeds and tags, which isn't what I'd expect, right? So everything here I would expect to be an action, and it's actually navigation. So if you're doing that within an action bar, navigation stuff should all be over on this side, next to the app icon. So this is all fine. So this is just the overflow menu sort of customized, which we're fine with. But again, so I would think about how you can put these, either as tabs or as view pager items, something like that. Might make it a little bit easier to understand.
Does the app have view pager implemented?
It doesn't at this level, at least.
Okay.
So say if I go through, read one of the articles, then yes. So the articles themselves are, and so this is quite nice with the fade in, fade out. I thought it was fading in, fading out. Perhaps it isn't. Maybe I'm just too quick. But so these overlays I think are quite nice. So I guess this is going to let me increase the size of the text. But again, all the touch targets are a little bit too small.
Right.
So it's good that they're not obtrusive, but it's really hard to sort of click them and understand what's happening there. So you've got it on the tablet now as well. So
I
let's
do.
open it up there.
Let's switch to the tablet.
Close this. So it's the same opening.
Oh, nice. We're
Sweet.
looking at a 2-pane layout, which is good.
Excellent.
Let's go to Engadget and look for some stuff. Left-hand side, shows you a list of high-level titles, and right-hand side, once you've chosen a title, a news source, you can browse through the various news articles, which is quite nice on the right-hand side. And on the tablet, I'd say the touch target are a little bit
Well, this looks
bigger.
like a standard
It's
action bar to
adequate.
me. This looks like for tablets they've just gone with a standard regular action bar.
Right. Does look like
is much
it.
more
So
than
it
I
just
like it.
feels more natural, a lot more natural on the tablet with
Absolutely.
a bigger, touchable target.
Let's take it offline. We've done that to all of the other apps. We'll do the same thing here. And we'll see whether Ian's favorite app actually does what Ian was hoping it would do.
All
So
right,
let's fire
moment
up
of truth.
Reto Pro.
It may indeed be an optional setting, so...
Oh, okay. We'll check that
you
out.
may want to look at some of the settings. I completely agree with you on layout. This app frustrates me no end, but I haven't had anything... I haven't been able to find anything that has the same features that this does. The specific things that I like are it has... If you read long articles, the view pager will remember where you were.
Oh, that's nice.
Oh, wow.
So as you're scrolling through, so let's have a look at this Penn State scandal. That's not long. These are all short articles. So, but if we've got sort of multiple pages that we're scanning and flick through, it's going to automatically move right to the right place in each of the view pages.
That's correct.
Cool.
very
Does it
nice.
remember across devices based on your experience?
Well, that
No,
would
it
be
does
nice.
not.
That would be awesome.
That's
It would be incredible.
Yeah.
I don't actually think it remembers for very long, but that's not
Still.
usually what I'm looking for. Usually what'll happen is I'll be reading a blog, let's say, and flick through to the next article and then realize that I really wanted to see something in the previous article, or I'll even activate the view pager by accident. And it can
accidentally
be
scroll
very
across.
frustrating if you're reading a very long blog article to lose your place like that. The other thing that it does is it automatically mobilizes the text. I think that might be something that you have to set. I've seen other RSS readers do this, but if the blog that you're reading is one of those where it just has like a sentence or two of text in the RSS feed, what you can do is ask it to go and fetch the actual article and cache it offline.
Which is exactly what we're looking at on screen here. So in settings offline reading, there is an offline usage which allows you to either enable, disable, or select for Wi-Fi only, downloading the article contents after you've synchronized the headline. So that's actually a really interesting feature. I want to riff off this idea of being able to synchronize across devices, which is something that I think, from a games perspective, I think a lot of us have been asking this for a while, so that you can synchronize your progress. And I would love to see this across more apps like News, where I just want to be able to fire up the same app on multiple devices. So I'm reading it on my phone, and then I sit down and pull out my Nexus 7 and be able to continue reading the same things at the same place, so that it just feels like everything is magically synchronized to you. So obviously you're going to need to find ways to identify yourself on those various devices, but for users who do choose to do that, I think it will be a real advantage.
That's a huge plus.
Absolutely. So this is nice. So again, I like the layout here. Again, using sort of that white theme. I would point out that down the bottom here, where you've got I guess these are filters, so we can filter through these various items. The iconography here, using the colors, almost it feels out of place compared to the rest of the app. So I think it makes sense where you've got the names or the icons associated with each of your sources, because they are something which people recognize the colors for. But for most parts within the Holo theme, anything which is sort of a menu item or an action bar item, anything like that tends to be a monochrome icon, flat monochromatic icon, and I think that would look much more in place if it was the same thing here. So I would look at that.
And pull up the design guidelines.
Exactly. And
go through them.
And I don't think that there's anything specific in the design guidelines because this is quite a custom thing, but I think it would just sort of fit. I also noticed that one of your texts is getting cut off here, recommend, and given that sidebar is going to be, you get to decide how big it is, you probably want to make that a little bit bigger. But also keep in mind that, I think Roman pointed this out for an app we were looking at, I think yesterday, is that we tend to, so this almost works like tabs, and we tend to suggest that in tabs you should either go for just images or just text, rather than both. So in this instance I think just images, as long as you can provide icons which are obvious enough, which I think in this case everything but recommended would fit into that category.
Right. But for menu items, it's okay if real estate, if there's enough screen real estate to include both icons and text.
Absolutely.
Definitely keep that in mind.
So we have, I think, about 7 minutes to go. So I think is that all of the...
let's go through your favorite apps.
We had a couple more. I want to look at my favorite apps, but I think these last two, at least News 360 isn't actually a news app. So I just want to bring this up real quick.
Let's go back to the tablet, Ian. Thanks.
Perfect. 360 view, no images in this category. Latest news. Let's see what this is going to do. Interesting.
Oh, is it offline?
Possibly, yeah. That may not be fair. So it actually worked pretty well considering it was offline. So yeah, let's have a look. Latest news, internet connection is required to use categories, but you have an internet connection now. I turn it off.
Take some time.
Take a little bit of time.
Ian, stop browsing.
All right. So we've got an internet connection now, so let's try it again. So again, this doesn't have a latency,
All right, there you go.
which is nice. Rich display. Showing us that sort of two-panel option here, so we can see latest news. We can sort of browse through each of these. It's a little bit slow. I would like for things to come up a little bit quicker when I change categories, so you at least have the boxes and the headlines and some of the text, even if it takes a little bit longer for the images to come through. But this is nice, sort of.
I like the color scheme, the overall color scheme.
Absolutely.
It blends in pretty nicely within the app.
Absolutely. Like nice use of a pseudo action bar. I think everything over here is a bit custom. Not a fan of the settings page at all, or the settings icon. You're better off here to use an overflow menu with settings in there rather than trying to do your own consistent thing. If we go back, search using the built-in search widget, so I like that. Let's see, back. So hitting back should make the search widget go away rather than make the app go away. Just a little tip there. Let's have a look at the 360 view. So that's the name of the app is 360. Oh, that's a grim picture
That's
to have.
the differentiator, it looks like, of this app.
Exactly. So this is kind of cool. So we can scroll through the pictures, and I'm guessing if we click on one of the images, we we get the ability to read the article associated with it. So that's actually quite nice. And then the article view, we have, it's obviously a very visually based app where the pictures are a big part of what you're looking at. Oh, that's cool. Okay, so that's, having looked at all of those other apps in the few minutes we have remaining, I wanted to highlight a couple of what are my favorite apps. So one of those, particularly for news, is News Republic, which that's unexpected.
Maybe I was looking. Okay.
Must have already been using it. So this kind of follows that that theme that I was talking about right at the beginning of an app, which is being able to help create that narrative flow, something which I can open it up and just sort of start reading and seeing what I think is interesting. So we have the quick tour explaining what everything is. I'm, to be honest, a little bit ambivalent towards these helper screens. I kind of feel like apps should be obvious when you open them up. You should just start being able to start click things.
Right.
Things should just happen. You should be able to learn from what you're doing.
Right.
Particularly news. Like we've all read news before.
And for News Republic in particular, the UI is very, very intuitive, right? There are only two options. You can either go through the news articles or search.
Yes.
Right, so these, for the most part, these functionalities are pretty self-explanatory. So to your point, Reto, I think the tutorial screen is rather redundant in this case, just because, again, you guys have done such a great job in organizing the UI.
Exactly. So let's have a look. So if we go into a category, so straight away they've got some kind of interesting UI elements there, where you click on a category and it does that sort of 3D fade, which is nice, and it doesn't go on for too long, which is important. And so we look here, we can see all of the articles here on the left. We go straight away, and this is kind of important, we go straight into reading an article in the two-pane view. So we don't sort of get the list first and then have to choose an article before we start reading. We straight away get to start reading content. Don't think there's a view page here. No, there is. Excellent. So you can view page through each of these.
Great, and as you view page through, it synchronizes the caret.
So we can see straight away, and we can navigate either ways, which is nice.
Cool.
One of the things, so they've done, there's a couple, so for the most part it's a pretty standard news app where I like the layout. I think it looks really nice. There's a couple of differentiating features which they've done, which I think are kind of cool. One of which is that you're able to, this icon here, just on the top right, gives you an indication of how people feel about that particular piece of news. So if I click on it, it will tell you what people's mood are, whether they're astonished, pleased, indifferent, worried, sorry, angry. There's a whole sort of set. So we can say, well, I haven't read the article, so I wouldn't want to judge it. And then it'll tell you up here how people are feeling. So as you can see, as we go through here, everyone seems to be indifferent to pretty much all of this news.
I haven't read the news today.
Let's go with the top stories, because that's probably more likely to have some opinions, or possibly not. Here we are. So we can see 3 people have an opinion on this. Most indifferent, couple of worried folks. But this is really interesting because it gives you an idea as you're sort of scrolling through as to what the mood of it is. You know, is this something which is going to surprise me, make me happy, sad? And then that helps when I'm just sort of doing my news browsing to decide whether or not that's something I'm likely to be interested in. So we can see, people are pleased, which is nice. And the other thing I wanted to highlight was this sort of 3D view, which is kind of crazy. Cool. And this lets me browse categories. And so one of the big things about this particular app is that it tries to cross-link everything. So if there's a particular topic that you want to read about, you can follow that train through a bunch of different stories in the same way that you would on something like Wikipedia.
That's great.
So yeah, you can go into health. And then, so for example, here we can see that there's a bunch of things which have been highlighted. So we can click London 2012, and then it's going to find us a bunch of news articles around that. And so you kind of get that Wikipedia effect of being able to just follow the trail of breadcrumbs. So you could just keep reading for hours and hours. Let's see what the Sex Pistols are up to. I may be spoiling the Olympic opening for myself and others, so we probably shouldn't read too much more. But yeah, so I really like that, and it does a lot of those things right. One of the other things which I wanted to show you real quickly, let's see, I need to make sure that I don't have too many other things open on my other phone, because I need to use my real phone for this, so if we switch to the camera phone, we'll see.
Well, I'll switch as soon as I know you're not going to leak something again. Right?
Where's the fun if we're not leaking things? Come on, man. Perfect. Oh, wait, you shouldn't have seen that. No, I'm kidding. All right, so what we've got here is actually one of my favorite things.
Rich notification.
Rich notifications. So
what is richer than Android notification? Rich notification.
Boom. And so I discovered this by accident this morning when I was just playing around. I said, because I saw this. And thought, I would really like to read the rest of that, but I don't want to open up the app. And so I just gave it a try and dragged it down, and boom, there is all of the information I need. And it even has the ability for me to share or select my mood right there from the notification screen. This is really, really useful, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more apps implementing these rich notifications. And big props to the guys at Mobiles Republic for building out this stuff so quickly after the release. So one of the things I like about this app is that they do tend to follow all of our new stuff as soon as we release it. So for me, as someone who always has the latest phone and the latest OS, I get to take advantage of those features straight away. So thank you guys. Very much appreciate that. Now, it has been a bit of a love fest. If we switch back to the tablet, we've been talking about all the good things about this app. One thing which I want to take this opportunity to point out to them is that they do fail one of my tests, which is the zero latency. So it's pretty quick on the Transformer Prime, but I get this splash screen, and I get this splash screen every time I load the app, which is particularly painful when I'm following one of their great rich notifications. So they have a great notification system which every time a news article pops up, it tends to be something I'm interested in, because you're able to customize what kind of news you want to read, and so it tends to be something relevant for me. And I'll click it and have to wait 2 or 3 seconds while it loads past the splash screen, which kills me. So like by the time that's happened, I'm bored. I was just going to read it quickly while I was waiting to do something else. So if you guys can figure out a way to remove that splash screen and the associated latency, then you'll have possibly about as close to a perfect news reading.
Well, I would suggest that they could potentially use one of the techniques that Reto, you earlier mentioned. You can track when was the last time the user has entered the application, and if it's only 2 minutes ago, you can just bring back up the previous news items. Versus if the last use was from 30 hours ago, then you might optionally put up a screen that spins.
Yeah, so that's actually a really good point, and one which I hadn't even realized is that it doesn't go back to where I was. Particularly if I'm hitting the home screen, like, if I'm here in the process of reading through, let's have a look. So, if I go through and have a look at all of the happy, friendly news, which if Ian puts on the tablet, you'll be able to see that we've been able to select just good news, things which make me happy. Yeah, everyone's happy that stocks are going up. I know I am. Yay! And so, I'm in the middle of reading these things, then I go back to the home screen to do something else, check what time it is, and then go back in. I would expect that to take me to exactly where I was, and it's dumped me back in sort of the main home screen of the app, and that makes me sad. So, yeah, that's definitely something you want to work on as well. Perfect. Okay, so I think that's pretty much all the time we had, because I went on at length over the first app again, so I'm going to need to learn discipline. But that's all the time we have today for news apps. Next week, I think we're looking at recipes. I think recipes is what we're looking at. I want a recipe app. I want an app which lets me browse recipes, store my own recipes, all of those sorts of things, and I have not been able to find a great one. So importantly, I'm going to be looking specifically to pick out apps to highlight which let me store my own recipes and share them with other people, not just apps which provide excellent recipes. So do check out the moderator page, and if you have an app that you've been using that you think is perfect for this, please put it in there and we will check them out next week.
Sounds good.
Awesome. So stay tuned. We've got Ian and Dan for the Friday game review. I believe they're looking at tower defense games this week, so that should be interesting. And they'll be on in just 10 minutes. So stay tuned, and we'll see you next week, same time, looking at recipe apps.
Bye.